This is a Hot Pie Original.
Here's what Ted did. He comes home to Heidi and he's just like, "Hey Heidi, I'll be down for dinner in 1 second, but hey, can you leave your wardrobe out real quick?" "Okay. Hey kids, I'll see you down there." And then he locks it and he puts on Goodbye Horses. He does the dick tuck and he gets in front of the mirror and he just puts on the wig and he pulls out, because not a lot of people know, but he has pierced nipples.
Really?
Yeah, nobody's ever seen them. But
it's just known.
He starts playing with them.
You can kind of see him through the shirt if you really look, I think. Yeah,
he really just feels on himself. And that 10 minutes alone with Heidi sitting with the kids downstairs thinking that Ted's just up praying, getting ready for dinner, that's his solace. And that's where he regenerates all of his energy to wreak havoc on America. Hello, America. I am the music dilettante, and you are on the Music Fringe. And on the Music Fringe, we talk about different microgenres and specific, hyper-specific genres of music that you may have not have heard of. Unless you have a PhD in musicology or spend countless hours on the internet, SoundCloud, Tumblr, these deep wormholes of, hyper specificity. You may have not heard of Ethiopian acid jazz or cowpunk or gothtronica. And today we're going to talk about dance punk. It's actually a little bit more well-known than some of these other guys. And to talk about dance punk, we've brought on Trouble in the Streets. And you go by the acronym TITS, is that right? I don't want to throw TITS right out there, but
throw tits in our face over here.
Yeah,
we do. It's been it wasn't intentional, but it's been kind of thrust onto us. So we've embraced the tits and
involuntary memories right off the bat,
right here.
And we have Nnedi. And Nnedi, where are you from originally? Are you from Austin?
I grew up in Houston.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I moved here for school.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah. Andy, I'm from Phoenix originally, and I've been here. I moved to Austin like 11 years ago.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you both met at what is now the Mecca of music and what some people would say music nerds. And that's why you're deep in this bunker right now talking to said music nerd about, hyper-specific music genres. But, just to get right into it, like, where did you guys, end up collaborating? Was it just the music scene here, or did you guys know each other before?
No, it was more here. I had a band with our original drummer of this band. We had a different band that was like, if we're gonna get genre specific, what would you? we were like an instrumental, progressive fusion surf rock something jamtronica, post industrial, and so we had that going on, and I think we just knew Nnedi with mutual friends pretty much. Mm-hmm. She hung out a lot and came to our shows and said she had some music that she wanted us to help her out with. So when we checked it out, I immediately knew that I wanted to be a part of it. So we kind of shifted gears. That band, it didn't stop right away. We were juggling both for a while, but, it turned into this band,
Tits.
It was the Tits,
Trouble in the Streets.
That's right.
To go back to that first band, though, so you guys kind of, bonded over music nerdery. It was a very specific genre of music that, we were talking about this before we got on the pod, but Austin, as varied as the music, you'll hear on Red River, sometimes it really kind of puts its foot forward with, the Americana and the indie rock, but more on the safer side, right. And I'm not knocking these guys, but you think of like Shaky Graves, maybe Shiny Ribs, these are great musicians, but it really has put that Austin brand on here. So, when you talk about Austin, there's just such a deep and wide berth of different bands here, but it really does, those don't get a lot of attention, and the magnifying glass never finds themselves over. So how did you guys link up, and kind of a more eccentric genre? And sorry, can you say kind of what it was again? An instrumental,
the old band. Yeah. That was one of the early projects that I got into when I moved here. They were some of the first people I met in that band, and I think I wasn't really too aware of what Austin was trying to do at the time. So, and I just kind of came here with my own thing in mind, and they actually had an old band that was kind of that band kind of formed from the ashes of their old band, and I kind of fell in as a replacement guy, but then it kind of changed to this new thing. And so, I don't know, just listening to like a lot of 70s music, I think was more from that, like, Return to Forever and that kind of like, all kinds of 70s prog and stuff like that. We're like, let's go do that, and
you guys got super boring.
But then I think it was to tie it into like what we're talking about now too with the dance punk. I think that one of the things that got that band a lot more recognized than I think if we were some of the other bands that were doing weird stuff like we were doing is we always like to keep stuff danceable. It was always about the grooves. It was always about like make it a nonstop party, get weird musically, but like make the show a party. And that band did pretty well. It didn't get this, the recognition that I think we're getting now. It was definitely a weirder genre, and not having a singer, I think definitely limits your audience. But
yeah, I think that's the end result for all music. It should be getting people to dance, or at least moving. Now, dancing can be interpreted as, yes, it could be headbanging, thrashing, it could be break dancing, it could be gabber, Euro punk, spazzing out, looking like you're having a seizure. But at the end of the day, it is kind of simple in that you want people to relax and have like an emotional reaction, but that should manifest itself in dance. So it's not that hard to be a musician. Okay. The equation is to pluck a few strings,
make them dance,
and see if people dance. But yeah, to go back, I didn't want to shit on Yes or prog rock, by any means. I'm just saying that they probably play them in Guantanamo to get answers out of some of the most, tough terrorists in the world. No. But that's very cool that you guys met in that respect. And it makes a lot of sense because Trouble in the Streets is one of the more thought-provoking bands that I've seen, live in Austin, that you see a lot of bands that definitely, are going for the look and they're going for the aesthetic. You have a lot of talented musicians here, probably went to Berkeley that, technically proficient. But we mentioned this before we jumped on. There are not a lot of political bands in Austin that have like an authentic voice. Some may have political songs, or maybe they went through a political phase. But when I hear your music, it like from the toe up to the floor up, it just feels like you're wanting to enact change, and that, the lyrics aren't just meant to rhyme. You're not trying to connect stanzas. You're trying to, convey a message. And, you said this band before was instrumental. Was that tough to do? Was that fire there in previous iterations, or did that only come apart, when you did Trouble in the Streets?
I feel like there was still there's a lot of fire in it, but it wasn't conveyed in a way. I think part of the reason too, we all kind of agreed on doing an instrumental thing was we had been in so many bands where it was like, we had a singer because it seemed like you're supposed to have a singer, but it a lot of times felt like the singer was the weakest link of the band, And so we were just like, let's just do a band without one. And then, and I was going to be fine to do that again, I think, until we started. Cause I was like, well, if I'm going to have a singer, they better be really good, cause like we can play our instruments. So why should our singer be kind of like, they're all right, I guess.
Yeah. Why should they be middling?
Right. So
I had a drum teacher growing up that looked like a lot like Scott Stapp from Creed. I grew up in Houston as well.
Okay, yeah.
There's just a lot of those guys. He drummed for his church, but he had like a 16-piece set.
Crazy
and I was like, what church are you going to, bro? Like you're Neil Peart,
Exactly.
at First Baptist doing, Ed Young stuff. But he would always say that the two, things that ruin bands are the drummer and the singer. And I was like, that's pretty random. And you're probably just giving yourself credit as a drummer. That important. Like, doesn't everybody really matter? But at the end of the day, it kind of makes sense in that a drummer can absolutely, if you don't have time, like it's all over.
Yeah.
And then the singer, if, you're the face, you're the window into the band. And if you're not connecting with people, then, who's going to want to connect?
It's a 24-hour PR agent for the band, basically.
Exactly. and nothing makes you cover your ears more than someone hitting a bad note or something or having too whiny, whatever it is, like I think a lot of people, a lot of musicians want to fill that role. They see that's the person in the band they looked up to in their favorite bands was that front man. And so they had the ego thinking that they want to fill that position, but it's not for everyone, I'm never going to be sad. I've come to terms with that.
Yeah. I'm just getting nervous hearing you talk about like the expectations for a singer. And, I never plan to, front a band ever. So,
so
I assume that, Nnedi, must have the self-confidence of 1,000 Bonos, the will of 1,000 Bonos, to handle that kind of pressure. And I mean, it shows up in the music that obviously to convey that message that self-confidence has to be there. But with Trouble in the Streets, like, was there a meeting of the minds of this is how we want to sound and, here's our aesthetic, or was it, just a natural, organic formation of, what we see now?
I think it started off organically. And then, I think just with any project, you kind of have to reassess and see where you are and what your brand looks like and all that kind of stuff. So I think originally we just wanted to get something on paper. And so we made the music. But, I think we all come from different musical backgrounds, but we enjoy the same music. So it's easy to say that whatever has influenced us kind of shows up in the music, and then we can kind of shape it from there. Yeah.
And I apologize for that question. I immediately hated that question after I asked it. Is like, did you guys think about the band before you started playing, or did you start playing and then think about the band? But
I like to never think about anything. I just kind of wake up in the morning and walk in a direction.
Flow state.
See what happens. If my phone rings, I'm like, all right, jams today, And I just pick up an instrument and see what happens.
Wait, I'm breathing.
It just
Things are
happened,
working.
So, yeah.
But the reason I bring that up is because a lot of the songs and the way you sing them are with such intentionality. And, here's the analogy that I'm sure will be mortifying to you in some ways. As a, band, it's never easy to hear. I'm sure it's, you can be honored in some regard. But when I listen to Trouble in the Streets, I hear Rage Against the Machine meets Blondie.
Cool.
Maybe with a little Sade in there.
Yeah.
But, I really hear like the anger and just the cadence of Rage Against the Machine. But oh my God, some of the melodic breaks, and there's kind of like a disco, like glamour. I love that. Okay, great. That's cool.
I've never heard Blondie before.
I think Blondie.
That's new, but I love Blondie. I love Heart, and I think that's great.
I can bring up some specific songs that just remind me so much of kind of the Blondie post-disco era, where Heart Full of Glass.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad I could honor you in such a way. But but we all know it was done best by Paris Hilton.
Exactly.
In 2011, right after her and Nicole Richie finished the second episode of, what was it called? The Sweet Life? Or I don't even.
Simple Life.
Simple Life, right?
Yeah.
Where they were like lived on a farm. quality
I saw a
television.
clip about that. I was like, wow, those were dark times.
Yeah, right. We lived through that. That was a thing.
Yeah, we thought
people thought COVID was bad, but like back then we had to live through Paris Hilton having a TV show.
Yeah, I think that was a form of just like domestic terrorism that we didn't even know was happening, like through our TV, and it was enacted by two people who we thought we knew and loved, like we were being sold this bill of goods. Yeah, now we can like identify the enemy, but at the time,
I didn't even know who they were before that show happened.
Yeah, but we grew to love them.
Yeah,
and then we destroyed them with our pressure. Yeah. Like Nicole Richie ended up like driving backwards on a highway and on drugs, and Lionel Richie had to step in and like save her life.
Yeah.
And poor Paris was suicidal with her good friend Lindsay and Brittany, and we know how those two are doing right now.
Yeah,
the American public fought back, and it's sad to say we kind of won and broke them. And not to say there's a winner and loser in that war. It's a Pyrrhic victory. I think we all lose. Yeah. But have you seen Lindsay Lohan's new reality show? It's absolutely terrible.
No.
Imagine.
But no, to bring it back to Rage Against the Machine, and I'm sure that's like an easy analogy for a lot of people to make to your music because it is political like that. Are you guys fans, or like were you like most of people our age, and that Rage was played
everywhere,
throughout middle school, and that was one of the first cover songs that you learned. Mm-hmm. So how do you guys feel about Rage getting back together? It sounds like
I had tickets to that show.
No, you were one of the blue ball.
The show, the New Mexico was happening on my birthday last year, and yeah, that was a bummer when
in your hometown. Huh?
No, it was New Mexico, but yeah, that sucked. Just like I remember, like because you didn't know how long COVID was gonna last. They kept being like, well, let's not cancel yet, like maybe. And then they're like, well, let's postpone it like a month. And then it's like, no, that's not happening. I still have the tickets. They sent me an email. It's happening next June.
Nice. So Zach sent you an email?
Yeah, it's straight from Zach.
Hey, bud.
It was actually a little text, video message, just said, I want to text everyone personally here and just remind them to keep fighting.
Hello, America. I'll let you down.
Yeah, no, he doesn't say anything. He's like, that's like one of those bands where like they always blew me away just how consistently pissed off he is. Like, I don't think there's not too many other bands that are like consistently like, I feel like even like Pantera has some songs that are a little bit more on like the ballady end of things, rock power ballad, I guess you could call it. But like they never let up. Zach is always here. His voice is constantly cracking. I feel like after a show, he probably just has to like drink a gallon of ice water just to like let his voice rest.
Yeah, I just see him pacing in his like 5-star suite at the Four Seasons, just like, yo, Zach, calm down, dude. We had a great show. Yeah, I don't care. Like, fuck this materialism. Fuck the mini bar.
He's like, not everyone knows about Shay yet.
And he's also somebody who keeps a low profile. Tom Morello obviously is a prodigy, and he, can't contain his music, so he's going to keep manifesting in different acts and bands. But I don't know much about what Zach does outside of that because he disappeared. When Rage wasn't around. I think he just took time off. I know he was like his parents were professors. Maybe one was in the Black Panthers. Obviously, he had.
That kind of
great tutelage.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He had that one side project for a little bit, but I think they had one song that kind of got on the radio for a second. But A Day of Lion, it was kind of cool. It was the drummer for the Mars Volta's original drummer on that. But yeah, it didn't like take off like Audio Slave took off or anything like that.
Yeah, nobody's ever going to top what Audio Slave did. Unfortunately, like I love Audio Slave, but unfortunately, growing up in Houston, they get tucked into that 94.5 bin, totally. Which is kind of like butt rock.
Yeah,
and Audio Slave has so many redeeming qualities, but they're still on the list next to, Buck Cherry, Hinder, Blue October.
Totally.
Lit, all those.
Stained.
That was always the problem with those radio stations. I felt like growing up, that was definitely like my genre, but there was so much cringy music mixed in with it. Like I I loved like a lot of the 90s grunge stuff, like Alice in Chains, Nirvana, and Tool and whatever. And so you turn onto the station that plays that stuff, but that means you're also going to be hearing, the
it feels so misunderstood, dude.
Yeah, it's like, why is this the same? Just because they have a crunchy guitar, it's like it doesn't make it a similar genre.
Yeah, you'd be like, I love you, 94.5 The Buzz, but that ain't me, dude. Like, I don't listen to Velvet Revolver all the time.
Right.
Like, not this much.
I'm not a huge Seether fan.
Right. Velvet Revolver is one of the only big shows I ever like walked out on.
Really?
They were really fucked up. It was kind of sad. Yeah. They headlined after Alice in Chains, and they were like smirking at each other. It was so bad. Like there's this one song, like the bassist starts it and he just couldn't even, it just had some simple like kind of bass line. He's like, and he kind of looks at everyone like, sorry. And everyone's like, we did lots of heroin before this.
Absolutely. But I could see like all those guys had success before.
Right.
So I could see that it's just like, we already got hits. Like we dominate MTV. Like, this is pre-Napster, so we're going to sell a bajillion albums and not, touring really doesn't matter.
Right.
And let's just be legends, really. Let's just inject Jack Daniels.
Straight into the vein.
And fucking rail lines off handicap stalls while, we party with ICP. But to go back to like, Houston is such a weird place to come out musically. I think everybody looks at it and you're like, okay, you can be Lyle Lovett and Clint Black and Pat Green, or you could be DJ Screw,
Zero,
Fat Pat, Zero, and not a lot of people are looking for anything in the in between. Right. But growing up there's a vibrant scene. It just nobody really got the thrusters behind them to make it nationally. I mean,
Fat Tony's like one of the in betweens. Like he's super punky electro.
Definitely. I think now they've stepped out and Houston's getting a little bit more love. But growing up there, like,
for sure.
How was it? Where did you get your musical inspiration in Houston? Because let's be real, it was kind of a desert.
Yeah. And I was super sheltered as a kid. So a lot of Christian radio.
Yeah.
What was it? Maybe like 1507 or something like that. One of those. I don't know. Anyways. And a lot of Sunny 99.1. Lots of it. A lot of Delilah and late night.
Yeah. Plain
Sade.
White Tees.
Yeah. A lot of Bryan Adams and ballady songs. So.
Yeah. You gotta love that about like Houston. The radio stations just stay the same throughout. Like they refuse to change at all.
Yeah.
I always joke, if you had gone into a coma in 1998 and fell asleep, went into a coma listening to The Buzz and woke up, you'd still think you're in 1998. They literally don't have to change the list. But I think it does cause this like perverse baby of creativity, like the band Khruangbin that's now taking over the world. They've sold out 3 straight dates at Stubbs. They collaborated with, Gary Clark. Awesome. They all met at church in Houston.
Really? That's awesome.
And they just decided, let's play some Cambodian throwback rock. And hey, it ended up working.
Yeah.
But for you guys, like what was the songs that you wanted to play that kind of proved to everybody else that you're going to school with that I'm a musician? Like for guitarists, it was maybe I just learned, Smells Like Teen Spirit, those riffs, and I'm a guitarist now, so I can start bands. Exactly. I just learned how to play Brain Steel on the Ride as a drummer. And
just on the ride.
Yeah.
Hire a drummer.
Only cymbals because mom won't get me the toms yet.
I've got a pillow though.
I'm still in your band, okay? But what were those songs for you guys? What was the litmus test to see?
I mean, I sang a lot when I was a kid. I mean, I sang a lot. And I think the way I learned how to sing, I wasn't really in choir or anything like that, but I just would sing along to the radio. I sang a lot of Paramore. And I think that learning Haley's range kind of helped me feel like I was capable of doing that, and I think that was kind of my litmus test, is if I could sound close to whoever's on the radio, then I could be on the radio, So
Yeah.
just if I could get my range down and my strength and all that.
What was the crossover with, like, I feel like a lot of Christians love Paramore. Like, what she...
Oh, it's a thing.
It was kind of the thing with Creed, too. Like, Creed was never outright...
And
Yeah.
yeah.
But Creed was never outright a Christian band. You know, they just had the intonation and obviously the imagery, and it could have been church songs that you're singing in the pews at youth group, but they never, like, and then we learned that Scott Stapp was like making sex videos with Fred Durst and like, doing, a mountain of drugs on the side. And, he was being played in youth groups across the nation. But anyways,
it's the loophole.
Gotcha.
It's the parent adolescent loophole where you're like, oh, I can listen to this music because it's Christian music or it's, pretty benign.
Mm-hmm. Or if you can make your parents think so.
Even though the whole emo, I was so emo, like the whole emo swoosh and everything. And it's like, but look at these music videos. Like it's Christian music, Flyleaf, Switchfoot. Like there are so many.
Were you shopping at the Hot Topic at Edwards Cinema
at Edwards? When I could get out there, but Sharpstown probably.
Nice,
the closest.
We would go get the Santa pictures at Sharpstown Mall.
Oh, nice.
That was fun.
Nice.
But how about you, Andy? As far as the litmus test,
the early stuff. I mean, so for me, it was like I started off more as a bassist. I took piano lessons as a kid, but like bass was the first thing I started playing in bands. So like, I'd say it was like learning like some Zeppelin bass lines and stuff like that. That was kind of when I felt like, if I could play a Zeppelin line, that was definitely cool, right?
Yeah, the cooler echelon is like, oh my God, his dad must be cool too.
Right. Yeah. My dad was a big classic rock fan. So he was actually, it's funny because going back to the Christian thing, he was a big classic rock fan, but he was also like the leader of my church's music group. So like he was like the guitarist, folk guy, singer. So I'd sometimes play in that too. So that was kind of an interesting like back and forth between like, oh yeah, Zeppelin and the Doors and all this crazy music. When you really listen to it, you're like, this is not Christian music at all. And then songs about God also.
So you guys kind of have Krongben vibes, and that the seeds were planted in Christian nursery. Yeah, by the sweet leathery hands, the carpenter hands of Christ,
6 pounds,
and they were watered with the blood.
Yeah.
That became wine. And it grew into the Holy Ghost and Paramore and all that good
Scott
stuff.
Stapp sprung from the soil and blessed us all.
Human clay.
Exactly. There you go.
I mean, they were just asking for it.
They really were.
But
that cover is so like, I feel like that's like one of like the early like CGI graphic kind of like design, like the clay guy coming out. So like, I get the concept, but it's really bad.
Yeah, it's almost like an orc that's coming out. Like it was just created out of the mud.
Yeah, they just made some like mud man.
It's like, were you foreshadowing Lord of the Rings too? Yeah. I think we're all underestimating Scott Stapp, and that we need to re-examine just how ear popping deep him and his artwork were and are. And I think a lot of people just see him as the guy who had an 8-pack and Jesus locks.
Flew into a football stadium at halftime and the whole thing,
really coined butt rock. And when I say butt rock, a lot of people, ask, why would you coin it that way? And because it literally sounds like something's going up their butt as they sing. And I just have to explain that.
Who started that voice? Because I feel like it's
Eddie Vedder.
Yeah, that's true. Sure. Yeah.
But he would hate to be associated.
Oh, I know.
He would hate, like, if he was the grandpa at that Thanksgiving, he would absolutely just be sitting outside staring into the woods, pretending to be senile. Because he doesn't want to acknowledge any of his family of butt rock that he's created.
His butt babies.
Yeah, absolute butt babies. You know who also might be in there? Like Lane Staley.
Yeah.
Those
he's
guys.
A little higher. What's the guy's name? The guy we were just talking about, Velvet Revolver and his old band.
Scott Weiland.
Scott Weiland, the other Scott. Yeah, he was definitely in that. And yeah.
Hey, Scott, it's so sad what happened with him and his addiction. But he kind of was one of the last real rock stars. I mean, he knew he could make money however he wanted to, yet he was consistently broke.
Mhm.
He, had multiple, his families came out and were just like, I know you're his fans, but he literally was a terrible person and never like saw us ever. And he just loved living on the road. And he was found OD'd on the bus before, he literally died on the road.
That's crazy.
It is wild.
And I'm not making light of it. I'm just, for some people, they're just road dogs till death.
Seriously, yeah.
But on that extremely light note, I want to segue into dance punk, which is the microgenre that we definitely want to dive into before we get too lost in butt rock and butt babies. But as far as if I throw like just that microgenre dance punk at you, what bands kind of pop up for you just intuitively? What would you think?
Yeah, like
dance punk band.
Dance punk. I guess, that early, like, would you consider something like The Clash or something to be maybe at least kind of pushing in that direction?
Definitely. I think punk like implies that they're an underdog and that they're fighting against something, that there's a chip on their shoulder and they're punching up. And dance is, when you think about punk, you think of very staccato and just fast and great. You think about Ramones and Sex Pistols and just what your straightforward is. So when you put the dance in front of there, I'm like, okay, well, now they're incorporating more rhythms,
a little more backbeat.
Yeah. And I think that's what the Clash kind of did for punk, or they were the first step towards there. They're not really acknowledged as one of the forefathers, of dance punk. You'd have to go to bands like Gang of Four, Talking Heads. Actually, I feel like the Clash are right in there because when I name those two bands, they pop right up. But dance punk emerged in the late 1970s. It's closely associated with the post-disco and new wave movement. And it reemerged in the 2000s or late 90s, 2000s with LCD Soundsystem. So if you want the poster boy for dance punk, it would be LCD Soundsystem because they're bringing together, a lot of different styles of music. And they have this edge to them. There's an angriness in James Murphy and how he writes. And, he goes between singing and kind of spoken word, and, keeps it edgy.
Gravelly voice. I remember them always kind of surprising me at first because you hear the way the song starts before like the singer comes in and just the instrumental breaks. And it sounds very like poppy electronic music, a lot of just like sequenced synthesizer lines and stuff like that. And then, which you don't normally expect to have like kind of like harsh, gravelly vocals on them. But then he starts singing, you're like, oh, it's different. That's a different take on like to have rock and roll singer with that kind of music.
Yeah. How familiar with LCD are you? Because James Murphy is just a spiteful creature. He's an angry man. And, one of the reasons LCD exists, and I guess dance punk, came back to the forefront is because he felt that he was wronged by ex-band members of the Rapture. I don't know if you remember, the couple albums that they had, but Tim Goldsworthy and James Murphy started a record label called DFA Records. And they had this huge hit, with the Rapture. And, with that, they thought that they could ride that forever. And James Murphy was just like, I'm going to be a producer forever. Like, I love doing what I do. I can play the instruments, but I never have to tour. I can just run this label and sit and be a master genius. And then when they caught fire, Goldsworthy and the Rapture decided to sign with a bigger label. And he felt absolutely, spited by that. Are you guys familiar with the Rapture at all?
I'm not really, no.
Not too much. I've heard the name.
Yeah.
I think I have like, now that you're saying it, I kind of remember hearing that story, but Yeah, I don't really remember what their music was like.
Yeah, so they came out with a couple records, and when Tim Goldsworthy decided to leave, he's quoted as saying James is a very aggressive person. He turned the Rapture betrayal into a kind of anger. James Murphy's parents had died around this time. A combination of that and him inheriting a lot of money all had this huge effect on him, to where he said, fuck this. I've got a plan. I'm going to fuck the Rapture over. I'm going to be bigger than them. I'm going to get a bigger advance than them. And then I'm going to absolutely destroy them. And so when the Rapture left, he was so hurt. He went ahead and started LCD Soundsystem with one goal in mind, which was absolute destruction of his other bandmates, which is like the most punk rock thing ever.
Right, totally.
At the end of the day, also one of the most fundamentally mentally unhealthy things to do.
Fueled by revenge.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know how familiar you guys are with LCD's songs, but that hit they had, Someone Great. If you've ever heard that, it's a beautiful song, but it's like, when someone great is gone, and you're like, okay, this is about a chick. Like, it's definitely him singing about like a lost love. And it turns out that's about his therapist. And that his therapist had been with him for over a decade.
Oh, wow.
And, multiple significant others have chimed in and said that, his therapist was way closer to him than any of them could ever be.
Oh yeah.
But obviously this guy had a lot of anger issues, and was having trouble manifesting them, and music saved them. As far as that goes, there's some anger and trouble in the streets music. Just talking to you right now, you couldn't be, nicer people, from what I gather. Both from Christian families, just seem like good stock.
We was raised right.
I think it's definitely more of a passion, because it's like, I say this a lot, but just because I feel like it's so ingrained in the music that we make. Nina Simone says, it's the artist's duty to reflect the times that they find themselves in their art. And I feel like there is a lot of anger right now in the world. And I think the advent of technology has really helped people be aware of what's going on. So it is hard to not have some of that anger and passion translate, because for me, it's more so I don't want to be disingenuous with my art. I think Andy feels the same. We could be singing, and we do. I think that's just life. There are different facets of life. So, you sing about the happy times, but you can't ignore the bad times. As an artist, I think it's important to have that kind of full scope of what your life is like. So,
absolutely. If you didn't have that outlet, do you think there would be bodies littering the street? No.
I think for a lot of people, music is a way of kind of transmuting those feelings of not knowing what to do or understand. If you can find something to listen to that will at least help ease some of that in any kind of way, I think that's what music does. It heals people in that kind of way,
Yeah. The obvious culprit to point to would be, politics have proven to be more divisive than anything we could have ever imagined. I was going to bring this up when we were talking about Rage. There was so much to be angry about back then when he was singing on, in Washington on the court steps, all those awesome, live shows that they had. He was viscerally angry, but it's like, oh my God, if only. Obviously they've seen what's happened now, but if they were peaking like that right now, like. Would it be that much more intense? Because the fires, like the dials have just turned up. It seems like we're cooking with a lot more gas. Yeah. There's a few leaks, in the hoses, and there's a lot more volatility. But I don't feel like, there's been a reciprocal reaction as far as artistry. A lot of people said when Trump went into office that there was going to, at least there's going to be this huge artistic response, and we're going to have an artistic golden age. didn't happen.
Didn't
happen at all. And with music, I feel like we didn't see any real rages. No Rage Against the Machine showed up and played in front of the court steps. I mean, who do you had like Bruce Springsteen maybe stumping for like Democratic candidates or like Taylor Swift getting out there and organizing.
Yeah. There
wasn't anything like visceral. No, you know, there wasn't like a real leadership in the music world. And that's scary and it sucks. And I mean, maybe it just reflects that artists don't have the sway that they used to be, in that, you know, one artist can wield selling 5 million albums and show up anywhere and command that, now that we're so stratified and streaming that nobody, and maybe it's social media has watered everything down and just made people a lot more, not paranoid, but just jaded, and that they're not willing to throw themselves into it. But, I think that's one thing that we were promised that we did not get with the Trump presidency. And, when you talk about channeling, your anger, like there should have been, especially for artists, no more of a better time, to make that type of music
and say some shit like that. Yeah, I feel like it is like you said, maybe the social media watering it down and maybe people not wanting to like stick their neck out for that kind of thing. Cause, I feel like music these days has become very formulaic, like, and especially not even like, it's gotten to the point where I feel like first it was the labels that wanted to be formulaic, where like, at first they were just kind of like watching to see what worked and just giving a lot of different kinds of music a chance just to see, like, they're like, this whole music industry is just kind of blowing up right now, like in the 60s, like, let's just give people a chance, throw some money at it and see if it works. But then once they found out what works, they started cutting away everything that didn't work, and until they like, now pop music is just so formulated out. And I feel like that's now come to the point, and I think maybe social media and the fact that a lot of bands have to be their own manager these days has made bands be more calculated too. Cause I think for a long time, even though that like it was the labels making those decisions to be formula and not be safe, it was like, there's still probably a lot of bands that were trying weird things and trying to go against the grain. And maybe they'd get enough recognition that the label would finally be like, all right, give them a chance. They're drawing a crowd. But now I feel like now it's so much so that like so many bands are like having to make decisions like that themselves and be their own manager and coming to the conclusion, like, I want to make formula music too, because I want to make it. And this angry stuff just isn't, whatever it is. And they want to be the next, thing. And I feel like rock kind of took a bad turn in the early 2000s, late 90s, where like, it's just not that cool anymore. All that Seether stuff you were talking about earlier. Yeah, exactly. I feel like just
a lot of body slam Creed again.
Yeah, a lot of musicians just don't, I feel like that's just not who they're looking up to anymore. Like for a while, that was like what every band I was ever in earlier was just like, you ask them what their favorite bands is, and it's a bunch of heavy stuff from the 90s and earlier. And now it's a lot more like people like R&B or people like jazzy stuff. Jazz is kind of coming back, or like the Americana stuff, but none of that stuff really it has a lot of emotion still, but it's not like rage, it's not like real anger in it anymore. So I don't know. I do wonder sometimes if like, it's just, I thought like you thought when Trump got in, it was like, it was right for a change, but it didn't really happen. So I still do wonder if it is still around the corner or not. And I don't know. We're trying to do something with it, but
yeah, I feel like everybody's cannibalizing each other just for attention. And it's gotten to the point, I think you made a great point in saying that people are now buying into being formulaic. It's like, well, now we have to do this on their own. Like they're not going to force me through the sausage grinder. I'm going to have to jump through myself to become, the Jimmy Dean that most Americans can eat so that I can eat.
A nice because microwave biscuit sandwich.
Yeah. at the end of the day, like being an artist is a luxury. Like it's tough. You know, not everybody has the trust fund where they can just go in and, you know, by time almost everybody has their full-time job. We'll jump into that right now. But like, what do you guys do for a living full-time?
I do a few different things. My most stable job that I do is I bake for Rockstar Bagels. They're wholesale baking. But then I also do live stream editing on the side. I dance. I'm a performance artist. So last year was kind of weird because there weren't a lot of gigs, but that's starting to come back now. So, and I also perform with Golden Dawn Orchestra, but that's orchestra. But that's still music.
I saw you this Saturday. We'll come back to all that, but I just wanted to make a point. What do you do for?
I'm kind of an odd job kind of guy too. I've been, you know, before this last year, I was definitely getting closer to music being my main thing with a couple different projects, and I also do like video editing and graphic stuff, and I was doing a lot of like stagehand kind of like setting up events and stuff like that, mostly like corporate stuff, just that kind of thing, just kind of keeping it in the industry. But that kind of went away. Right. It's starting to come back, but it's still kind of, there's a long list of people who want those jobs and not nearly enough of them.
So you guys are trying to keep, you know, foot in the creative side, but at the end of the day, it's like you're going to have to put in minimum 40 hours a week. You're going to have to, you know, work your ass off, and that's just not going to change. And what you're also doing is, you know, dedicating a lot of time to your art, which doesn't guarantee healthcare and the 401k and doesn't guarantee security in the long run. So it's a sacrifice. And with that, it's scary. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a band and you're trying to make it happen, you're sacrificing a lot, you know, to begin with. And that's when it becomes dog eat dog. It's like, at the end of the day, I love music so much. I'm willing not to pervert myself, but to do a lot, to clown myself, to do whatever to get people's attention. And I think, you know, that's something we laugh at, like TikTokers right now. And, you know, all these dumb kids who are just, you know, swinging their arms to, you know, overdub music and getting a million views. But unfortunately, that has become a skill set, and that is now considered a talent. They may even be teaching it at college at some point, but it's not intellectual capability. It's how do you grab people's attention and how do you spread awareness? And that's period, end of it. Yeah. And, you know, that's the only skill set you need to be successful. And so that goes along with music too. And that, like, you know, I got 5 of my buddies together. We wrote the greatest album that me and everybody else has heard. But if I can't get people's attention and figure out how this works, then, you know, it's just going to be it's going to be a fun thing that we can look back on. It's going to be a side project. And that is so depressing and just hollowing and soul crushing that people are willing to do whatever to get their art into the world. It's like, okay, well, do I have to throw this gimmick on it? Do I have to, you know, maybe go down this road, you know, just to get things moving? And in that, you have to start sacrificing, you know, parts of yourself. And unfortunately, the average American listener is just not that discerning, and doesn't have a ton of time for music. And I'm not, you know, attacking the unwashed masses of America, but I think there's always going to be a market in hyper specificity and microgenres and stuff like that. But at some point, you know, that compromise conversation does come up, and it's a matter of survival. And I think that's where you start losing like the conviction, you know, to start going after stuff you want. But at the same time, like, if you're clever enough, you should be able to market it and turn it into something. You should be able to take your hatred of Trump and your values and, you know, rework it into something that people, you know, can swallow, that is palatable. You should be able to put some sugar on that medicine, you know, to somehow get it down. And anyway, it's a tug of war, and that it's always depressing kind of looking at like, now we're in the age of streaming and payola and streaming, and like how many likes you have on Instagram and how many streams you have literally gets you a different pay grade and gets you booked and gets you opening for bands that may, set in motion, how you make it. But that maybe will be co-opted by creatives at some point, and it will be reversed. It's going to go back and forth. It's always done, and it's always happened that way. And so I'm just hoping, that that happens soon, because a lot of people are like, well, streaming's putting, everything back in the hands of the band's. Like, no, Spotify doesn't pay shit.
No,
YouTube doesn't pay shit.
Yeah.
And it's really just weakened everybody. Now, like, the suits who actually were music people, who at the end of the day were putting in hard-earned sweat to get music out there and to foster artists, they don't have a big business anymore. Now it's all around live music.
Right.
And, it's easy to get real depressed about and just get on some Paxil and go stare out the window and just count the amount of ladybugs that land on, the windowsill, and just let the SSRIs take hold. And, maybe a tear just falls out of your eye, and that's as good as it gets. But I do have faith in that, especially us Americans, there's a lot of ingenuity and there's a lot of fuck you attitude. And, there's definitely bands who are breaking that mold and will continue to do so. And,
I think
Trouble in the Streets is one of them.
Could be. That's what I think. We're just trying to do what we want to do, regardless of that. It definitely, like that compromise and everything does definitely sneak into things. But at the end of the day, we don't want to do anything because of compromise. It's like we're pretty influenceable people. Like, as far as like, we like a pretty wide genre of music. So sometimes our music goes softer, sometimes it goes harder. It's generally not because of a compromise. It's just kind of like, I feel like writing a chill song right now. But no, I mean, I think it's a weird thing right now. Like, you're talking about like the Spotify not actually giving it to the musicians. And I think that's totally true. But it's like, it's a little bit, it's like everyone gets a chance to have their like little 15 seconds of fame. Everyone gets a chance to put a real record together nowadays, where I feel like before, you had to be handpicked to, like, you had to be doing something that made them be like, that guy right there. Let's throw a bunch of money at him, while there are tons of other bands that never made it out of the garage. And now you got this. And I still think there's a chance, like, if some band can just have a fuck it all enough kind of attitude and put out a record that, they made themselves, or they know a producer who's got a nice home studio or something like that, and they can put out a record that is going to speak to people. It doesn't need the big companies behind it, because they can get it out there, and even using TikTok or something like that, put 9-second clips of it on TikTok or something. Just, and if it starts to reach people and people are like, what the fuck is this music? Like, I'm not used to this. Like, look that up, and maybe it can. I feel like there's still a chance for a good revolution with that kind of thing.
Absolutely. There's a give and take on everything. I think the main difference that changed is visuals to social media.
Oh, 100%.
Have become paramount. I think two great examples are, you look at Tyler, the Creator, and, he came out with that Odd Future song that just blew everybody's mind. I'm blanking on the name right now, but, we put the bodies in the bag.
Yeah.
They had the blender with like the different human organs going in. Earl Sweatshirt's walking around and just freaking everybody out. And that launched the career of one of the most unique, artists that, he's put out a huge body of work. And that, viral sensation, literally was kind of a joke, set them on the path. And then on the flip side, you've got Bad Baby, who went on Dr. Phil and had one line, and now she's one of the top selling rappers as Bad Baby. And she's, like what, 19 years old, and she's a multimillionaire and rap pop star.
Yeah.
So it's always going to be, give and take, but there's just a lot of shit out there that, is like soul crushing, and depressing, to a certain regard. And I think, maybe the A&R executives back in the day, like, in dance punk, when you had, Gang of Four or Joy Division out there, that you would have guys who really love music, and they'd be like, okay, well, we actually have to look at this band. They might actually set a new scene up there. This could be like a whole new music genre, and get going off of, that. And that's what happened with dance punk as far as, those two bands, got going. They give a lot of credit to like the Funkadelic and, some of the other funk artists from earlier in the 70s, and that they were definitely, taking, different styles of music, with rhythmic complexities, instrumental demands, slow tempos that would alternate, all of these things kind of got retooled into dance punk. And with Joy Division, they ended up becoming New Order, and New Order is the nexus between what I mentioned, dance punk in the late 70s and what it would become with LCD Soundsystem. And that in that time period, you had house music, that New York scene where, new wave was coming out, Italo disco, electro, all of that, was the bridge over the water to what became, LCD Soundsystem. And then, here are the bands that you might recognize a little more, but, Liars, Death from Above, 1979, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, Arctic Monkeys, The Faint, Q and Not You, Chick Chick Chick. This is always a fun one to say. Yeah. Block Party, which is personally one of my favorite bands ever. So, all of these bands existed in a time where record deals were still being given out. That's actually, a lot of people say like the bands and the Strokes and Kings of Leon and like those were the last guys who really got rich off of music, because they were still saying they were actually kind of on the downslide. A lot of people point to like Korn and Limp Bizkit were like the last ones that actually got rich.
In that rock genre. Yeah.
But that's where dance punk ended up, with those set of just incredible freaking bands. And I don't know if you're a fan. I think you like, which ones did you perk up at, Nnedi, that you loved?
Which one?
Of the bands I just listed out.
Oh, like Arctic Monkey.
Yeah. Have you guys read this book, Meet Me in the Bathroom?
No, I've not.
So this is written by Lizzie Goodman, and it's just from 2001 to 2011, what the New York scene was. And you can just read on the back here.
Oh, wow.
The Strokes, White Stripes, Interpol, TV on the radio. It was just like what the scene was for that decade and how all these bands interacted with each other. And it's just phenomenal. But, dance punk was a huge part of that, and that you can look at like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and a few of those other guys. How about you, Andy, or any of those bands? Like, were they influential or something that you geeked out on?
Definitely. I remember it going on, and it was definitely, I don't know, it wasn't as much my thing, but it was definitely something that like it was kind of tied closely to things. Like it felt like a continuation of the music I was into, like in the 90s and the rock, the classic rock stuff. It definitely felt like, it's that torch being carried on to the new kids kind of thing in the 2000s. But no, I mean, there's a lot of cool bands there. Interpol was kind of a cool one. Yeah.
Were there any bands that were just like, holy shit, the world's in Technicolor now? That like, you hear like when the Beatles heard the Beach Boys, you know, like that lit them up. Or when you hear about like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones talking about hearing Muddy Waters and like growing up in England and hearing like Robert Johnson and how they're like, oh my God, like the world is actually like vivid now.
I think there's some stuff coming out recently that makes me feel like Hiatus Kaiyote is a band that kind of makes me feel that way. Like when I first heard those guys, like they really blew my mind. Like it's just such a combo of like weird rhythms and like weird synthesizer stuff, but with like jazz and then, you know, vocals that kind of go back and forth between some kind of R&B and then something rhythmic, more like rhythmic and tribal or something to it. Just very like kind of visceral music, but with a lot more. I feel like I've been hearing a lot more, and I like this a lot because I really like technical music, but like it's always been more, that's been kind of like my nerdy guilty pleasure is technical music. Nice. But I feel like with some of the bands that are coming out now, they've like figured out a way to really make it cool, you know, and not be nerd music or like Thundercat, stuff like that. And
Polyphia,
Polyphia is pretty dope. Definitely more in the rock stuff with them, and or just like everything going on with like the jazz hip hop, I feel like it's all like what's his name, Flying Lotus, kind of like that kind of label and that scene going on, you know, mixing people like Kamasi Washington and that band. I was just
about to say, I always link those three together. It's Kamasi, Fly Low, and Thundercat.
Yeah, and then like Kendrick Lamar got in on that. You know, they all made that album with him on Pimp a Butterfly, and it just, I feel like it blew the doors off of that combination, and it's all of a sudden like jazz is cool again. You know, jazz and hip hop have finally, like, not that it's never been combined before, but I feel like it's just like
it's called neo soul.
Yeah, exactly. But it's
excuse me, sir.
Yeah,
this is the microgenre podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
We're gonna have to correct you.
We don't just combine words and think it's gonna work, you know. I mean, obviously a lot of things have been done before, but like, I feel like they've done it in a way that's really catching on, and so it's cool to see that, and it's cool to see like where that's. I feel like that's one of the things that made me like okay with the idea that like rock might not have a resurgence anytime soon. Is like hearing that kind of music and being like, well, I can get into this.
Yeah,
I can feel okay.
I'll walk down that road.
Right. Well, like Kamasi was the last big show I saw before quarantine. He played like a super sold out show at Empire, probably when we should have been on quarantining still, but I didn't get sick. And it blew my, like I had already known his music, but like seeing the energy there, it felt very much like a rock show, you know. It felt just very intense and sonically huge, but just more like so complicated too, and like all these weird rhythms and technical jazz lines weaving with each other, but just reaching these peaks that just had your kind of, you know, eyes go to the back of your head a little bit, you know.
They're definitely one of the Jedis that is making music like more complex and fun. Not making it more complex, but just not dumbing it down for once, which is refreshing.
It is.
It's like you're just not trying to bludgeon me with auto-tune and simplistic, you know. But what about you, Nnedi? Was there any bands that really, you know, obviously Haley from Paramore?
I think one of the first ones, because I had listened to a lot of radio growing up. I didn't really know that I had access to so much music. So I later on ended up doing a lot more research just about other bands, and Andy and Bobby introduced me to a lot of music. But I remember the first time I heard Animals as Leaders, and I just like lost
That's
it.
Another one for me, yeah.
I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, how did they do that? How did they, you know, there was a lot of those just like little ad libs that it's like it was instrumental, but you could see how vocal everybody was and how it just meshed together so well. And that really like blew my mind. Hiatus Kaiyote was another one. And that was really awesome to just experience like, a lot of it is I didn't know you could do that. And then when you find out you can, you're like, I think it really influenced our music.
Oh, big time it did. I remember telling me and our old drummer were listening to that for the first time, some Hiatus Kaiyote, and like I didn't know what like their whole setup was. I was like, some of this, it was so like a synthy and arpeggio and like weird break beats that didn't quite make sense but were somehow rhythmic, and I got it in my head. I'm like, so this is like a DJ producer with a girl singer, and he's like, I think it's a band. And I was like, if this is a band, then this is my favorite new band. And I look it up, I'm like, it is a band. Like that's so cool. And yeah, and I took that to heart. It's probably my favorite new band now. Like so yeah,
both with fun names, Hiatus Kaiyote and Animals as leaders.
Right. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely bands that listeners should be looking up on their Spotify, or actually just go independent, man. Just like look them up.
Yeah, look them up. Go to Bandcamp or something.
Yeah,
everyone make Bandcamp popular. They're the best website out there for bands, but they're just not that popular. You know?
Yeah, they're actually trying.
They do. They give the bands more of the money.
Do you guys believe in witchcraft?
Yes, and like in what way?
Yeah,
like,
right.
do I
That's
believe in it, or do I
complicated.
think it exists? I think people use it, but I think it's all energy. I'm not gonna be like, oh,
it's
it
a good
doesn't
follow
exist.
up. Like, you know, I'm definitely not asking if you're Wiccan or anything like that, but on the energy plane for sure. Like, do you believe, that energies can be manufactured and affect people? And I guess my end game here is, do you think music can be construed as witchcraft?
I think so. Yeah,
totally.
definitely. I feel like, to me, I've always been kind of like back and forth on how much I believe in a lot of that kind of stuff, like whether or not like, your intentions can set a spell, and like, and I think I've seen some things that make me believe it, and other times I don't believe it as much. But music, it always is true. Music will change your mind about things. It will change your whole mood. I feel like, it definitely, I think I would be a completely different person if I didn't grow up with the kind of music I grew up with, if I had gone a different path, or if music just wasn't a big part of my life. Like, so that, to me, that's kind of casting a spell, and I feel like you can do that to an audience full of people. Like, people leave a show with a whole different mindset sometimes. Like, so in a way that, it does. You talk about the 60s being a big cultural revolution. It's pretty much because of music and drugs.
Yeah.
That's probably the other magic out there.
Yeah, music causes social change, and it's the big motivator, unifier, baby maker, killer.
Yeah.
Does it all. It's multi-use. But, to tie in the political part of that all, do you think that our next president should be a musician / rock star? We're already at this point where, like, Donald Trump was close to, he was on WWE, but he was close to like a Batman villain / WWE character. But why not? Yeah, why not just have like a Steve Vai, or just a
That'd be awesome.
like a guitar?
Always needs a fan in front of him with his hair flowing, right? Yeah, I don't
exactly.
know.
What do you think about our tax policy?
Stamp it.
The rock tax. He's like, there's like new taxes just to pay for his new guitars and stuff like that.
Yeah, Republican or Democrat, dude. I vote for a second set.
Yeah, right.
How about the Encore party?
It's like,
Encore party.
we need a new party, a wild party.
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
that?
BYOB
That's
party.
like from the Alex Cooper song, like, I want to be elected. You know what I'm talking about? At the end, he's talking about, like, he sounds like a politician. He's like, the rise up of a new party. He's like, a wild party, a beer party. It's like elect me. There's gonna be girls. There's gonna be. It's just like, that's the kind of party we need.
If only you knew that you'd be playing golf in your old age sober.
Yeah.
He's literally just like, I'm addicted to golf. I can't party anymore.
I'm wearing my little plaid shorts, and he's from my hometown, so.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. Alice Cooper's from Phoenix. Was one of the few early people to come out of Phoenix.
Nice.
With his weirdness, was this insanity.
Yeah, one of the first people to really pull in pageantry and the whole thing, like
horror and all that.
I would say him and Iggy Pop did for like stage performance, what Scorsese did for cinematography.
Yeah.
That's it. It's an analogy that everybody else will dissect and just be like, what the fuck are you talking about? But I'm just saying he brought, a lot of attention and light to it. But yeah, that was my subtle ask to see if you guys would create a political party here in Austin. We're at the live music capital of the world. I think what better place than any to get a musical revolution going and just not be even like, not be coy about it. Just say like, I'm done with, the red and the blue, the huge divide. Like, let's just make music at the forefront. And while that's happening, we'll kind of just vibe on different issues and figure it out. But music needs to be played.
Totally.
Yeah. Like while any discussion, is going on in the House or the Senate, while you're pontificating.
What are you listening to? Are we and they can argue about that, but everyone has to finish the track before, one person might be like, well, I like chill study beats on YouTube.
It's riding around in your friend's car in high school rules. Like you got to wait for the track to end. Okay. You got next, but
unless what do you think Ted Cruz listens to? That's my question. If somebody gave him the aux cable, what do you think Ted Cruz puts on?
Dude, Teddy is probably listening to like Chris Gaines on the low.
Yeah.
What was his name? The rock star who came up with the Australian alter ego, Garth Brooks.
Oh.
At the height of his power, when emo dyed his hair black and pretended to be an Australian country singer.
I almost forgot that.
And that's probably Ted Cruz. He's like, I'm being bad.
It's me.
Because Chris Gaines.
Maybe Shania Twain.
Garth, but he's kind of like you, Daddy. I mean, Raphael. Oh, I hate myself. I hate when I'm doing the country, but you're so powerful. Look at you. Look at you.
I think you put it, if you like grabbed his headphones and just took a listen before he could like quickly change it, it would just be like, you are a human. Act human. Make human conversation.
It's just like a space odyssey.
Just like affirmations to remind you to stop acting like an alien.
I would like it to be like killer. Like that would be fucking awesome. If like he was so calculated and he just knew what he was doing. It was like that, but he was like, you know what? I'm a bad motherfucker for pulling all this shit.
Right.
And he's just like, you pull it off and it's just like, Killer Mike, nobody move. He's just fucking like thugging out and just like having a ball doing it. But on the real, he's probably listening to fucking like Seals and Crofts. I could see like yacht rock, but like bad yacht rock. Like there's good yacht rock, and he's definitely into because you got to think like nobody likes him. Like
he does live in Houston.
The GOP hates him. Houston hates him. I'm pretty sure his wife hates him. He wants to check every box of hate. He thrives off it. He's almost like this reptilian creature that just like absorbs hate energy and manufactures that into fuel. So you just need to take like the antithesis of everything positive and agreeable and just figure out what that is, and that's what Ted Cruz is listening to, because he doesn't fit like any mold. He's not a good Republican. He's not a good independent. He's not a good Tea Party, or he's not a good Texan. He was born in Canada.
He's none of those things.
He's not a good Cuban. His dad's Cuban.
His name's not even Ted, right?
Yeah, it's Raphael. I mean, he's just quite the anomaly, but in a way that's like, it's kind of punk rock.
He's listening to. He's probably listening to this dance punk. He's probably just got Joy Division.
That would be the best. I mean, that's what usually happens with like GOP senators, right? Like you eventually find out that they're so repressed that they're in some Minnesota International Airport playing footsie with a guy in the airport bathroom and then he gets busted, and you're like, aren't you the guy who passed like homophobic legislation for the last 15 years?
What?
Yeah, he's listening to like Morrissey or something like that. Just like there's like offensive people who just like,
Yeah.
people are so like they want to still like his music, but they're just like, you're just the biggest dickhead ever. And Ted's like, yes, I want that. He's like, I didn't even know about this guy when he was popular back in the day, but now I'm buying the albums,
Here's what Ted did. He comes home to Heidi, and he's just like, hey, Heidi, I'll be down for dinner in 1 second, but hey, can you leave your wardrobe out real quick? Okay. Hey, kids, I'll see you down there. And then he locks it, and he puts on Goodbye Horses. He does the dick tuck, and he gets in front of the mirror, and he just puts on the wig, and he pulls out, because not a lot of people know, but he has pierced nipples.
Really?
Yeah, nobody's ever seen them.
But it's just known.
He starts playing with them,
You can kind of see him through the shirt if you really look, I think.
Yeah, he really just feels on himself. And that 10 minutes alone with Heidi sitting with the kids downstairs thinking that Ted's just up praying, getting ready for dinner, that's his solace. And that's where he regenerates all the energy to wreak havoc on America. But that's probably what he's listening to is like the, most twisted out there. I'm just waiting for the day that like, he probably couldn't do it in Austin because he's so recognizable, but they find him in like the Czech Republic at some, club called the Toolbox.
Yeah, some industrial rave or something.
Where he's got eyeshadow on. And they're like, aren't you Ted Cruz, like American politician? He's like, no, shh, just dance with me.
He's got leather.
Dance with me, Hans.
He's got the little leather baseball hat.
Yeah, platforms.
Make me feel like a light little boy like I used to be. Anyway.
I can see it. I like it. I like the idea of bringing the music into politics. Like, what if that was part of like your platform when like during your campaign is like, what kind of music do you listen to?
Yeah.
And so like we probably like all these senators probably have terrible taste in music and stuff. And I feel like that would lose them a campaign all the time. Like if every one of their ads was just the terrible music they like to listen to, and then people would be like, well, I can't vote for this person, obviously. Then somebody's coming in with all these cool microgenres and stuff. And you're like, well, what's your politics? It's like, yeah, but this stuff jams. Like, I'm going to vote for this guy.
That was a huge appeal of Beto. And that, he played in a punk band back in the day, and he knew his bands. He knew, there's videos of him talking about punk and his favorite, bands that he went the evolution of, discovering certain bands that we all love.
The Who
but
and all that.
I think a good podcast would be just focusing on campaign songs, because that is a huge deal. Like, Trump couldn't get approval from anybody. And he had so many cease and desist across
what
the board.
Did he finally get 3 doors down or something? Well, yeah, he did get the YMCA. That was so ridiculous.
Or something like that.
Oh my God. There's nothing more nauseating just seeing him like
YMCA. Like, it's just so like, what is that even like? YMCA, like,
and it's a gay band.
It is, and the song's all about like gay people
where you can be yourself. You can hang with the boys.
It's
at
great,
the YMCA.
And I guess Trump's down for that.
Well, Trump,
Or is he just not? Is he just that confused?
He's just broadcast.
Like, it's a song, whatever. It's a song that we could finally get and people know it.
Look, him and Ted just have this special bond together.
Yeah, right.
They get out there, but. With Bernie Sanders, he had David Bowie, Moon Age, or no, what song? Starman was his campaign song. Like, can you pick a better song than Starman? Yeah. But that's super interesting, with the campaign songs. And the other one is songs that intelligence agencies use to break people. And so the CIA released a list, like a playlist of here are the songs we used at Abu Ghraib, at Guantanamo to break people. And you have songs like, I'm a Barbie girl. You have Pantera is on there. It's a mix. It's like from hyper pop, to Barney, I love you, you love me.
What you really got to do is start like messing with the songs. Like there's like, if you go on YouTube, there's like a whole genre of people who have like edited a song in a way that just makes it like so horribly cringy. Like the one, my favorite one that I'll play, and I found out about it because like bar owners are like will put this on at last call, like when they're trying to close and people are taking forever to leave. They'll just put on these horrible tracks like it's Toto's Africa, but they took the vocal line and they separated it and put it one beat slow, or no, it's one beat early and a half step wrong. And it's horrible to listen to. It's just slightly off and they just sound like bad karaoke, and every time, because you know the song, and every time it comes to the part, you know, they're like, it's off, and it just makes you feel so like weird and cringy. You know?
Like you're having a bad trip.
Yeah. I would love to just see that played at bars across America. You know how like that song, "She's Just a Small Town Girl." What song? Journey. Don't Stop Believing. Like just to see that played at every bar as people are drunk, like, and then but have it like a step off, so everybody's just getting it wrong, and then they're getting flustered. They're like, "Wait, my life isn't like a fairy tale music video. This sucks. I don't get it."
Yeah,
but that's for another music genre or microgenre podcast. I definitely think we should get into some of those fun political songs and torture songs.
Yeah, right.
But before we jump, I definitely want to plug, you guys are playing May 29th at Independence Brewery.
Yes.
And are you guys on the bill with anybody else? Any friends playing with you?
It's like a little 2-day fest. And to be honest, I haven't really heard what the full lineup is the day we're playing, but we're the headliner for the Saturday.
Hell yeah.
And then Sunday is Bright Light Social Hour.
Nice.
So yeah, it should be a pretty cool little thing.
Big classic Austin band.
Yeah, exactly. So,
man, I wish we could have gotten a little bit more into your day jobs and you playing with Golden Dawn Orchestra. That was an incredible show that they had. That was such a release.
It was fun.
But you guys are working on a full length album, and we talked about this a little bit before. Just how much of an impact you've made off of 2 EPs. I feel like you're definitely in my upper echelon of Austin bands that I like to brag about.
Awesome.
That I feel is unique and that doesn't sound like other Austin bands. And, when you realize that you have such a small body of work and how big of an impact you made, it's pretty impressive. So full length is very exciting considering like the punch that you guys pack. Any updates on how that's going? You want to talk about it at all?
It's in the I've over the past few years I've kind of become like the producer of the band, and we're gonna take it into a real studio to finish it, but we're kind of in the like creating the demo version of it right now, and so just putting all the ideas together, making sure the song list is exactly what we want it to be. Because like right now we're just a duo. This is the whole band right here. Yeah. And that kind of came out of pandemic stuff, some drummer issues. And we kind of figured out that with all the electronic stuff I'm doing, it made sense to just.
He spontaneously combusted.
He did. There was just a little globule of goo. No, he went home to Ohio. It was,
same thing.
Yeah, exactly. But no, yeah. So we just decided to start leaning into that heavy, more electronic side of our sound. But I think on the album we want to have, more real instrumentation. So I'm kind of making the demo version of everything right now, and then we're gonna get some players in there in the studio, and we're talking a couple different studios right now. So we're still kind of figuring out exactly where it's all going to go down. But
nice. You recorded in the Orb before, right?
We did. Yeah. The last two were at the Orb. And one single that we have one single that's like ready to go, but I think we decided we're just going to add this onto the album instead of, letting it go before other things are ready. And that was recorded at the Orb as well. So yeah, but I don't know. We like the Orb a lot, but I think we kind of want to mix it up a little bit, try something new,
Definitely.
There's a lot of really great producers in Austin to work with.
Yeah, you guys are in a circle with a lot of creatives. Obviously, you were hanging out with Golden Dawn, like, you know how ancestral Austin music is. So I'm sure everybody wants to work with you considering your sound and what you guys have done. And you have all the resources at your fingertips, but from a fan perspective, super exciting and can't wait to, find a release date whenever that may happen. And glad to hear you guys have persevered through pandemic and, found, you've evolved as well. And yeah, would definitely like to check you guys out on the 29th at Independence Brewery. So.
Yeah, we'll have some new music, a lot of new songs that, nobody's heard before. So, and unless you've been to one of our last show, really, nobody's really heard the electronic drum vibe that we've got going on now. And it went really well. The Empire show, that was like the first real big show we went. And that was a little nerve wracking to be like, we used to be this one thing and we do it this way now. And
do you still love us?
It went great. It went great.
Yeah,
so it really made me feel like we're doing the right things with our music. So yeah, excited about this new.
Well, you should feel encouraged. You guys you're awesome. And even if you decide to cover Creed or something
we'll make it
the like on May 29th,
we'll do it in a cool way. Techno version of Arms Wide Open.
20-minute version.
Yeah.
I'm 100% into it.
Yeah. We'll get some of the top jam guitarists to come up there and just noodle for 20 minutes and then bring it back and everyone will be like, oh, they're still playing Creed.
Just 20 guitars all playing Creed.
All at the same time. Yeah.
Nothing absurd about that.
No.
Well, whatever it may be, I'm super interested in it. And I'm just so grateful that you guys could come on the podcast today and kvetch about everything from dance punk to Ted Cruz dancing upstairs. But you guys have been super fun. And again, May 29th at Independence Brewery. We'll see you out there. And thanks again, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Awesome.
Yay.
Thanks for listening. You can find more episodes and all other Hot Pie Media originals baked fresh daily at our home on the web at hotpiemedia.com, the Hot Pie Media YouTube channel, or wherever you listen to podcasts.